The thought of detention camps, tens of thousands of people in detention camps, is a nightmare. It is not what India should be doing, because detention camps are the nightmare of the last century. A lot of people are called illegals or Bangladeshis without focusing on the fact that there are people who have come pre-1971, pre-Bangladesh. And there's an unfortunate tendency of clubbing everybody who happens to be a Muslim of Bengali origin, Bangla origin, or a Hindu of Bengali origin, to basically call them Bangladeshis. The target is people of Muslim origin and Bengali origin. How good is the documentation? Is there a bias? And I think in both the answer is the documentation has not been as robust as it could have been. There have been many errors, flaws which we have seen of people who shouldn't have been declared foreigners or suspects or put into detention camps, whether it's the army officer who was marched in, or you have a situation where a former president's nephew doesn't have the documentation, so he doesn't know what he's going to do. And a large number of them happen to be people of Bengali origin, both Hindus and Muslims. So it's not just a Muslim thing, it's also a Hindu thing, in which many people who are, shall we say, indigenous, who have been in Assam for centuries, many of them feel that, why is anybody asking us for documentation? We are people of the soil, sons of the soil. Why should we have to prove our existence? If you don't find yourself on the list, if a person doesn't find himself or herself on the NRC list on the 31st of August, he or she will first have to appeal to the Foreigners Tribunals. The Foreigners Tribunals in its own time will take a decision on that appeal, and then it can be appealed again to the High Court, after which it can be appealed to the Supreme Court. So we're not looking at a process that's going to be over in a few months. This is a long drawn process. It's been long drawn already. And we have to take into account the trauma that people go through, the mental anguish, the pain of dislocation, the costs that they suffer. And many of them don't even know they're entitled to legal aid, which is free and which should be offered by the state. The thought of detention camps, of hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people in detention camps, is a nightmare. It is not what India should be doing. It is not a thing that we should even be thinking about, because detention camps are the nightmare of the last century. And we must always remember the Palestinian revolution originated in refugee camps. So please, we must be mindful of this. We are sensitive to our own security concerns, because you don't want a situation to arise where radicalization, and there is every opportunity, every chance of this happening in the future, whether it's the distant future or the short term, radicalization sets in, and people who are desperate, don't really care about consequences. People can't be deported unless the country you are deporting them accepts them. Bangladesh says there are no Bangladeshis in India. Whatever illegal numbers are there are very small, and if they are identified by their embassies and by the High Commission consulates, and there is a verification process matching their names and identities and addresses to identities and addresses in Bangladesh, happy to take them back. One. So you can't deport people just like that. Assam government recently had made its position clear in a panel discussion. People who are found to be illegally settled or illegally present in Assam should be deprived of their vote and their right to property, which means, and the minister also indicated that rights to health and education and livelihood will be upheld. So this is basically saying that you're not moving people, you're not pushing them out, you're basically making them vanish from the electoral rolls and not to hold permanent property.